The benefits of solfeging are immense. I would like to share them with you because I find that when one, in fact, learns that language, you can put the music of the piano pieces you play through your fingers, therefore, with the cognitive organization of your gestures. It's important, and I find it almost liberating to be able to think the pieces that you play for memorization or for practicing, even therefore mentally, sections that give you trouble when you're not always around the piano and traveling or somewhere else. And that you can, in fact, chew, speak, if not sing with intonation, the fact that you name the notes, and the Latin do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si allows for that quite well, of the combination of vowels and consonants. So, first ballade by Chopin, do, re, fa, si, la, sol, re, do, re, fa, si, la, sol, mi, fa, do, re, fa, si, la, sol, sol, fa, mi, fa, la, mi, re, do, do, re, fa, si, la, sol, re, do. And the intonation corresponds to the expression, not to the sound intonation, but to the tension release or the, let's say, the wave of the phrase expression. You could also think about, therefore, while talking to you the piece, telling it to you, or even speaking it to yourself loud voice, how to organize a further direction of the given phrase, do, re, fa, si, la, sol, re, do, re, fa, si, la, sol, mi, fa, do, re, fa, si, la, sol, sol, fa, mi, fa, la, mi, re, do, re, do, instead of do, re, fa, si, la, sol, re, do, re, fa, si, la, sol, mi, fa. What does it change? Perhaps nothing on the surface, but in fact the intention, the direction towards which you set your eyes on the horizon line further than the one of the expected tension release that the music expresses through its phrase, harmonization, or melodic structure. For instance, the beginning of the C minor Johann Christian Bach sonata of the Opus 16, Sol, Do, Mi, Re, Do, Si, Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, Mi, Re, Do, Re, Fa, Mi, Re, Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La, Fa, Mi, Re, Mi, Do, Do, Si, Si, La, La, Sol, Sol, La, La, Sol, Sol, Fa, Fa, Mi, Re, Do, Do, Mi, Re, Do, Si, Do, 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 Si, Si, La, La, Sol, Sol, La, La, Sol, Sol, Fa, Fa, Mi, Re, Do, Mi, Re, Do, Si, Do. Second theme, Si, Do, Si, Si, Do, Do, Si, Si, Mi, Si, Si, Mi, Si, Si, Do, Si, Si, Do, Si, Si, Fa, Fa, Si, Si, Fa, Fa, Si, Sol. Okay, it sounds silly like that. Head voice, solfeging fast. It sounds, at best, like some kind of mental illness. Just because, in fact, a lot of this solfeging, not only ear training for solfege, it's the concept of the studies in Europe or in France specifically, but the fact of solfeging in terms of speaking the notes in the tempo, or at least a certain pace. Of course, you cannot do that with chords, but you can do it also with layers of voices. For instance, the fugue of the opening of Book 2 in C major. Sol, fa, sol, do, la, sol, fa, mi, fa, sol, mi, fa, sol, la, fa, sol, mi, fa, mi, re, mi, do, re, do, si, do, la, si, do, re, mi, fa, sol, fa, sol. This is, of course, already with the second voice having entered. Do, si, do, sol, mi, re, do, si, do, re, si, do, la, do, si, do, re, mi, do, re, si, do, si, la, si, do, re, do, si, do, re, si, do, si, la, si, do, re. And you feel like the 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 1, the organization of the group of 4/16th notes in Bach in flows that connect into a perpetual motion, 2, 3, 4, 1 or 3, 4, 1, 2, but mostly 2, 3, 4, 1, but never 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That makes it structurally very heavy, because then the melodic line corresponds to the harmonic root, and that would be heavy. Bach never does that. He goes always with a departure on the upbeat first invention. Do, re, mi, fa, re, mi, do, sol, do, si, do, re, sol, la, si, do, la, si, sol, re, sol, fa, sol, mi. And then the bundle. La, sol, fa, mi, sa, fa, la, sol, fa, mi, re, do, mi, re, fa, mi, re, do, si, la, do, si, re, do, si, la, fa, sol, la, si, la. So it becomes a way to live the music You can drive, you can be cooking, or you can be doing the laundry or any other activity and still maintain the piece that you're learning or studied or memorized in you. It's a way to keep it in you fresh and through the years as well. I find that it's a very helpful system for those who can learn the do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si spelling even later in their life, because I find that if we use the C, D, E, F, G, A, B in English or C, D, E, F, G, A, H in German, they're perfect to name the tonalities, C dur, C major, but to speak fast, they have too many vowels. It's not practical, and it's not used. And the fact that it's not used, in some foreign countries, they have different traditions about music theory teaching to children when they start an instrument. I understand that it depends, I guess, of the influence of which music theory school of thought is used. I understand in Korea, for my many Korean students, when they're young, they teach them the solfege notes, but for the sharp and the flats, they still use sharp flat. So, for instance, if it was book one, E major prelude, mi, sol sharp, si, mi, re sharp, mi, do sharp, si, do sharp, mi. That's a bit more complicated, but it fits to organize both. In French, we call sharp dièse and flat bémol. But when we solfege, we don't use it. We imply it because it makes an extra 2 syllables. When you go fast, it's no point. Especially because you have to be able to go in the tempo of the piece, like the 40th Symphony. Mi, re, mi, re, mi, re, si. Si, la, sol, so, fa, mi, re, do, do. Re, do, do, re, do, do, re, do, do, la. La, so, fa, mi, re, do, si. Of course, if you think about the pulse and the tempo, mi, re, mi, re, si. Si, la, sol, fa, mi, re, do, do. Re, do, do, re, do, do, re, do, do, la. La, sol, fa, mi, re, do, si. And it liberates your hands from playing in order to think the pulse, the phrase, the pace, the pulse, the incentive of the tension of the build-up between the strong and or down and upbeat, how you rebound. And that, I think, is often for pianists a problem, because we are so much taken by the playing as the industry of playing, the cognitive facts of all this independence of fingers, organization of shiftings and all things, that we don't think the music separately from playing it. And many students naturally first memorize through their fingers because it's a mnemotechnic finger technique. But if you have this on the side, as I said earlier in the solfege, that you can say in your head in fact summarizes ahead of time by telling yourself the notes you'll play, almost as if you, as I said now, when I speak it to you, I do it mentally to myself. And in a way, it becomes a complementary energy of inner world that is like a conductor within the orchestra, being the performers. So it's another way to express the elements that you play on the piano without to touch them with your fingers. And I find that this chewable music, so to say, or speakable, singable eventually, helps a lot to imagine even the interpretation and the right tempo, because you're disconnected from the fingers who dictate you a lot by the action of the keyboard, if the action is heavy or not, acoustics and all. But this is purely the contact with this written score that you verbalize literally, when you normally sonorize through the action of the piano, which indirectly hits the hammers to obtain the resonance, the pedal, the acoustics. Of course, that's what pianists are. They play the piano. But what are solfegists? They solfege the music. And if you can solfege it in your head while you play it on the piano, I guarantee you, you're far, far from having any chance to have a, let's say, mistake, perhaps not, but a mental blockage or a mental gap, or a moment where you have a memory lapse. That's normally, if the solfege is going on in your inner world while you play the piece, you're sort of connected to the score of the music of the text that you serve playing it, by being able to tell it to yourself. Nothing but sometimes for the articulation of clarity. because you can solfege things legato, mi, sol, si, mi, re, mi, do, si, do, mi. Or you can divide them to detached, mi, sol, si, mi, re, mi, do, si, do, mi. And so therefore, like book 2, F major fugue, fa, mi, fa, do, la, sol, la, re, do, re, mi, fa, mi, re, do, re, si, la, sol, fa, mi, si, la, re, sol, re, do, fa, si, do, sol, si, do, si, la, si, do, re, mi, fa, sol, fa, mi, fa, sol, la, si, la, sol, do, mi, fa, sol, do, fa, mi, fa, sol, fa, mi, re, mi, do, si, la, sol, re. And these things I demonstrate here not to any, I know it sounds funny when I do it, I realize it. I'm not unaware of it. But I demonstrate for what usually happens inside the head of a solfegist. Regardless if they conduct or play the piano or cello or some other instrument, it's sort of the appropriation of the text through the solfeging that becomes alive in you, so you can whistle it, or you can sing it, or you can speak it, or even not just think it, and think it through the piece, not just sections. And I think that it is very jubilant in a way, because it's playful. If the piece is tragic, dramatic, or expressively light and fun and spirited, do, sol, mi, like Haydn Sonata, la, re, sol, do, mi, fa, re, mi, do, re, la, si, re, do, re, fa, mi, fa, la, sol, si, re, do, re, fa, mi. Do, mi, sol, do, si, re, si, sol, do, si, mi. That's the chords in arpeggio. Si, la, sol, la, re, la, fa, sol, do, mi, fa, re, mi, do, re, la, sol, si, do, la, fa, sol, si, la, fa, sol, do, mi, la, fa, sol, si, la, fa, sol, do, la, fa, sol, re, la, fa, sol, mi, la, fa, sol, si, la, fa, sol, do, la, fa, sol, re, la, sol, mi, sol, do, mi, sol, do, mi, re, do, si, la, fa, mi, re, sa, fa, sol, la, fa, sol, mi, fa, re, sa, fa, sol, la, fa, si, do, mi, re, mi, re, mi, re, mi, re, fa, sol. Ré, mi, fa, sol, la, si, do, ré, do, si, la, sol, la, si, sol, do, si, la, sol, fa, sol, la, fa, si, do, si, la, sol, fa, mi, re, la, mi, do, la, si, la, sol, fa, mi, re, do, ré. When I was younger, I had an academy in France where we used to have a little chorus of our own students who were mostly non-singers, and we enjoyed singing solfeging things that are written like in Dulci Jubilo, Bach organ chorale with a canon between the theme, la, 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 do, re, mi, fa, mi, in long values, and the decorative triplet, sa, fa, mi, fa, re, do, re, si, la, sa, fa, mi, fa, re, do, re, si, la, 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 do, mi, re, do, re, si, la, sa, sol, la, sa, fa, mi, fa, re, do, re, si, la. And we used to sing it in canon because it's written in canon. And I found that, of course, you could put words, syllables, scat like in jazz, da ba do ba do ba do ba da, or real lyrics, because after all, singing is conveying lyrics, and solfege doesn't convey lyrics. But I find that it helps because of that combination of consonant and vowels. It in a way settles the tempo because of the articulation. And it allows you to articulate different amount of legato, non-legato, staccato just by the words. Once you're familiar and you know the names of the notes, and they come out with the piece itself that you play through the piano, but you heard from the score that you read in your head. And then if you're singing, it's good. If sometimes head voice helps for the high register, to say the least. But even if it's not in intonation of pitches, just in the wording, and then the intonation of the phrasing shapes, that is what I said earlier, makes such great pleasure to organize one's thoughts. And when you think of any piece that you teach or you play, and you think, before I start playing it, I want to hear the beginning of it in my head, so you project yourself into it. For instance, the beginning of the B-flat minor sonata by Chopin, ré, si, do, ré, si, ré, si, do, ré, si, ré, si, do, ré, si, la, do, ré, mi, do, sol, do, ré, mi, do, sol, do, ré, mi, do, sol, do, ré, mi, do, ré, mi, fa, si, ré, do, si, la, do, sol, fa, mi, ré, fa, ré, do, si, la, do, sol, fa, mi, ré, fa, mi, ré, do, si, with the rubato for delay, si, la, sol, fa, and then the second page with inverted phrasing of the accent from the upbeat to the downbeat, ré, si, do, ré, si, ré, si, do, ré, si, ré, si, do, ré, si, la, do, ré, mi, do, compared to the ré, si, do, ré, si, ré, si, do, ré, si of the opening. Ré, do, mi, fa, si, ré, do, si, la, do. And then you realize that it's enticing because you don't need anything, not even an instrument, not even a voice. You just need the enunciation, which you try to do with the fingers, acoustically, pedal, and all these things. Well, not everything goes as planned. But when you hear it, think it, and it's in your head, it always goes as you want it. You give the incentive. It's so enthusing. It's so driving. It's so emotional as well. When you remember a piece that means to you much for a situation in which you heard it, played it, shared it, it's so beautiful that you don't need to. And if you have to develop, well, you can develop memory, but you can also forget. And sometimes I find an old piece that I tried to memorize before I look at the score again, I managed to sort of bring it back by solfeging it to my head and see how much my brain remembers the flow of the follow-up of the elements, you know, like E-flat minor, book 1, the subject of the fugue, mi, si, do, si, la, sol, la, si, mi, la, sol, fa. It's a strange case I chose intuitively because it's notated by Bach in sharps when the prelude is in flats. So it would be re, la, si, la, sol, fa, sol, la, re, sol, fa, mi, re. Some people consider that the idea of the perfect pitch is that it sets the intonation with the name of the note, which is true in real time. There is no lagging to do the parallel octave or parallel interval or unison search to make sure that by relative organization to a fixed note you define which is the right note, because you only way define what is essentially the interval, and a fifth and then semitone and a full tone and another full tone and another full tone and then a fifth and a fourth and a third and a second and a major second. You could also do it by the degrees. 1, 5, 6, 5, 4, 3, 4, 5, 1, 4, 3, 2, 1, the melodic degrees of the scale. You can name it re, la, si, la, sol, fa, sol, la, or inharmonically mi, si, do, si, la, sol, la, si. Now, what is difficult is to imagine when I have to happen that I have a perfect pitch. So for me to name different set of notes for pitches that don't correspond to the intervals on another tonality. Let's say I sing the beginning of this in F, fa, do, re, do, si, si, la, si, do. It bothers me because my brain connects the re to re, even if it's an imaginary re or a mi, but fa, no. And that's silly because in a way, with a relative pitch, you don't need to worry about that because the interval is more important than the denomination of the instruments notes that you play or sing or think that are organizing the space of this interval. A fifth is a fifth, fa, do, mi, si, re, la, sol, re, la, mi, si, fa, do, sol. Except in the piece that you play, because it's in a certain tonality that it is, I mean, the composer chose it. And so if you play the beginning of the Beethoven sonata in C major, mi, mi, fa, mi, re, sol, fa, mi, fa, sol, fa, mi, do, si, do, re, si, sol, do, si, do, re, si, sol, do, re, la. This is for Tandy. Re, sol, mi, the triplets of fa, mi, re, do. That's the left hand. Do, si, do, re, si, sol, do, si, do, re, si, sol, do, la, fa, sol, sol, si, sol. That was a combination of the two hands. Do, mi, sol, 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 do, mi, re, do, si, la, so, fa, mi, re, do, si, la, so, fa, mi, re, do, si, la, so, fa, mi, do. That's less easy to do with this quick 16th notes in broken octaves. But the fact that you hear it in your head, you don't have to tell it to yourself. I demonstrate here in a silly way, but I still wanted to share this with you because I think that even if one sings it less fast and less fun, but more meaningfully, you can think of the piece by verbalizing it as much with the same intensity and meaning and expression, obviously, that you give when you play it, sing it, or organize it by conducting it, or it's another type of instrument that is a bow compared to wind or voice. So in other words, pitches are good, intervals are essential. The very name of the notes are the connection to the very notation of the piece. And if you have these all in one, it's good. If you have the intervals, it's already very good. I mean by there that you organize your thoughts according to the spaces. And the general usage of a given leap in the music is always expressive of something. In a six, sol, mi, re, mi, do, la, sol, la, expression of love and expression of tenderness and affection around the perfect fifth by the major or minor sixth. Or perhaps something more martial, so sol, do, re, sol, mi, do, like the French anthem with ascending fourths. A fourth being a non-major or minor, but perfect, like the fifth interval. They are not the expression of some affections, rather some decisiveness, resolve. So sol, sol, do, but sol, mi. For instance, the C sharp minor was by Chopin, sol, mi, re, sol, la, sol, re, sol, la, sol, do, with a grace note, so si, la, sol, re, so si, la, sol, do, mi, do, si, mi, sa, fa, mi, si, mi, sa, fa, mi, la, sol, fa, sol, la, do, si. With the double sharps, it's harder to mention them. Fa double sharp, fa double dièse, fa double sharp, doesn't work. Fa, sol, la, do, si. Or the mi, fa, mi, re, mi, si, do, si, do, sol, la, si, do, sol, la, mi, fa, mi, re, si, do, la, mi, la, sol, fa, mi, si, do, fa, mi, re, do, sol, la, si, do, sol, la, mi, fa, sol, fa, mi, re, si, do, la, mi, fa, sol, la, si, do, si, do, re, mi, fa, sol, fa, mi, la, sol, fa, mi, si, do, sol, fa, mi, re, si, do, mi, fa, sol, la, do, si, do, re, mi, fa, sol, fa, mi, do, si, la, do, sol, fa, mi, re, mi, do, la. The A minor Chopin, Mozart, right hand part of mazurka. Or waltz, mi, la, si, sol, fa, si, do, si, la, sol, fa, mi, sol, fa, la, si, do, re, la, do, si, la, sol, si, do, mi, sol, fa, mi, do, si, la, sol, fa, la, si, do, si, la, sol, fa, mi, sol, fa, mi, re, do, mi, do, si, la, sol, si, la, sol, la, sol, si, fa, la, sol, fa, mi, re, do, fa, mi, sol, si, fa, mi, re, do, si, la, sol, si, fa, la, sol, fa, mi, re, do, mi, sol, si, fa, mi. I know it's funnier in the head voice, sillier rather than funnier. I don't have enough of a low voice. But the fact that you can express the emotion and the, for instance, joy in the relative major la, so si, re, fa, la, sol, fa, mi, re, do in the relative minor or the original key, fa, mi, sol, si, re, fa, mi, re, do, si, la. And again, la, so si, re, fa, la, sol, fa, mi, re, do, fa, mi, sol, si, re, fa, mi, re, do, si, la, sol, fa, mi, re, and arrival in major, do, si, la, sol, fa, sol, la, si, la, the tonization, si, do, la, fa, mi, re, si. And you can delay mi, fa, mi, re, si because of the leap of the seventh that hugs the sixth, mi, fa, mi, re, si. Of course, it is more natural when you do it when you speak, because, or you sing, or you hint to do a little of both, as I was demonstrating, because in a way, the leap has to be sung and held by the breath. That are artificial facts that you have to imagine and translate through the action of the piano that you make up as if you sing, but in fact you don't. You don't connect the sounds, you just push buttons. But you hear them as non-decaying voices of notes which have leaps or semi-steps or whole steps. All these things, in a way, in your playing as a pianist, come from your hearing of the piece from the score you read. And the solfeging is sort of the hyphen between the playing and the reading. And it's sort of like in between. It remains the non-materialized performance. It's no fingers, no keyboard, no piano for which it's written. But when you open the score, you read it like a book. You don't even need anybody to sing or play or demonstrate it for you, because you hear it in your head directly from the score silently. Of course, it's not very possible to do that in concert. It would be silly, right? So you have to verbalize it, and of course that is to yourself, or you're a conductor rehearsing a symphony. Do, re, fa, mi, re, do, re, re, mi, so, fa, mi, re, do, re, fa, mi, re, do, la, la, si, si, do, mi, re, do, si, do, re, fa, mi, re, do, si, do, re, mi, re, do, si, la, la, la. And actually it's always easy to conduct when you solfege because that gives you that pace. Again, the pianist doesn't do that because you have pedals to play that don't correspond to the beats, hopefully, because if not, you'll have troubles with the resonances and the harmonic progressions without to catch the resonances, but just clear the harmonizations. Therefore, there is no instrumental way on the piano that you hear the beats other than counting them while you play above and around the beats with your feet and the hands, and many layers, more than one. Therefore, in solfeging the piece, which is layering by one voice at a time by obvious necessity of single mouth, you still reach the point where you find the most natural expression of it that doesn't have to do with acoustic, the action of the instrument, heavy or light. It's just the music itself. You can be in your bed, you can be on your bike, you can be under the shower, and you go the same thing. You hear, you think about a piece that you will play or teach or record or write about that lives in your head, in your soul, inside you. It's in you. Just like the music you compose, it's in you. The music that you know is in you. And you exteriorize it by playing it on the piano as a pianist, but you hear it, think it, imagine it, cook it in a way, so to say. Organize it in your thoughts by saying it to yourself, silently or loud voice. So I really am a great enthusiast about learning solfeging the notes. It helps a lot. The confidence and the memory and the organization of your thoughts when you play through your fingers and you hear it inside your head as you solfege it, loud voice or not. Thank you very much. And happy solfeging.